Hello, and welcome to the fifth and final installment in the series of videos on how to use ChatGPT to assist you in your writing. In this final video, I'm going to focus on AI assisted writing in terms of getting feedback on a section in a document, in terms of suggestions for improvement, as well as how to use ChatGPT as a dictionary slash thesaurus. If are not happy with the word choice in our writing, how it can make suggestions on how to improve that in terms of replacements that are potentially suitable for it. And then finally, if we're really stuck on getting started, how ChatGPT can generate a potential introductory paragraph that can give us an idea of how to get started, how to structure it. Again, the video will reinforce the fact that while ChatGPT can be a very powerful and helpful tool, it does have a lot of limitations. Again, it was trained on the general internet, so it does not have access to databases of credible information that we should be using in our research. But I'm hoping that at least some of the suggestions can help you get started and using it in a way to make your writing process a little less frustrating. So in this first example, I am asking ChatGPT to take on the persona of a literary agent or editor in evaluating the introductory paragraph that I'm feeding it in here. So this is the preface to a novel that I recently finished that I'm currently submitting to publishers and literary agents. I kind of just want to get some feedback on how effective this preface might be in providing some necessary details about the world, the historical context, and the structure of the novel itself. So it will make it easier for a reader to navigate that. So I'm specifying that I want ChatGPT to identify any grammatical mistakes, to identify unclear sentences, and any other specific suggestions for improvement that it thinks might be possible here. So I'm also asking it to just provide a list of suggestions right now and to, at this point, not rewrite the text yet. We'll get to that later. So here's the actual text. So again, the preface provides some historical information, some very general information about the Viking Age, how far the Viking voyages took the Norsemen from the modern Scandinavian world all the way to North America and present-day Russia and Ukraine. And then the second part here is intended to help a reader navigate the novel, since there are three different interwoven strands in the novel, and hopefully how clearly this outline can make it to a potential reader to understand what's going on. So here is what I received from ChatGPT. So I'm going to go through these one by one and talk about the usefulness of each suggestion. So number one, regarding clarity and precision, the opening sentence is informative but could be more concise. Consider condensing the information about the Viking Age to provide a clear and succinct overview. I'm not quite sure what it is suggesting here. Also, when I asked it to rewrite it based on its suggestions, it generated pretty much the same text that I fed into it. I could probably elaborate on the Viking Age a little bit more, but the main thing I wanted to convey here is how long it lasted, so that the reader has a general idea in terms of what the Viking Age is and how far their influence extended throughout Europe and North America and in Eastern Europe. Number two, transition phrasing. Consider using transition phrases or sentences to connect the information about the Viking Age to the specific focus on Bergthor's saga. This will help the reader smoothly transition from historical context to the novel. One thing I think I might have done here is sort of clarify, once I've established that the Viking Age lasted from 793 to 1066, that the novel takes place in the latter part of the Viking Age. It spans from 985 to 1023. So it's the latter part, and potentially also what that means, the fact that Iceland had been Christianized by then, which could give it more meaningful context. Number 3, thesis statement. Introduce a clearer thesis statement. This is not an academic paper, so I'm not sure what it is referring to here in terms of a thesis statement. So the first sentence here, Bergþór's saga is, as the subtitle suggests, a saga about a woman who relies on heathen magic in exacting her revenge after Iceland has converted to Christianity. So that's not a thesis. That's an overview of sort of what this book is about. Number 4, consistency in tense. Ensure consistency in the use of tense. The paragraph begins in past tense and then shifts to present tense. Yes, the first paragraph in the preface here goes into historical facts, which must be discussed in past tense. The next part here is a synopsis of the story, which is generally discussed in present tense. So this is the reason for the shift from historical past tense to literary present tense. So I'm not sure that changing that to past tense really would make sense. Number 6, specificity in themes. The phrase, a saga about a woman who relies on heathen magic in exacting her revenge after Iceland has converted to Christianity, could benefit from more specificity. What makes Bergþór's use of heathen magic unique, and how does she navigate this in a Christian Iceland? Okay, so here I could potentially elaborate a little bit more on what that kind of magic looked like, that some of it might be compared to more modern day shamanism, and why it's really important for her to keep this as secret as possible, considering that Iceland has officially converted to Christianity. So there are definitely aspects that I could elaborate on and make more specific. So I think that's a really helpful suggestion. Number 7, structure. The division of the novel into 3 threads is clear, so that's helpful. But consider briefly elaborating on why these specific narrative elements were chosen. What thematic or stylistic purpose do they serve in the context of the novel? So here, again, we have the frame narrative of the Augustinian monk in 1347, who is told by his bishop to write the saga. Then we have the actual saga that he writes, which is in third person. In developing that portion, I had to stay true to the conventions of a Viking Norse saga. Aside from structural considerations and stylistic considerations, it is written from a male perspective and a Christian perspective, and that is always very clear. And then we have the first person accounts of the actual people. So the whole point of that is I'm comparing and contrasting what Helgi is writing 300 years later from a Christian male perspective in a literary sense with the actual first person accounts of what happened to these people in their lives. And sometimes it's the same, sometimes it's very different. Perhaps I could have made that more clear, that is part of the reason that we have these 3 separate narrative strands that tie together. Clarification of terminology is number 8. Specify the term heathen magic for a clearer understanding, as readers may not be familiar with the term. I could provide a brief definition of what that means. It's fairly complex, but I think maybe being a bit more specific would not be a bad idea. Header information. The mention of chapter headers is beneficial, but provide a brief explanation of how this feature aids the reader in navigating the complex narrative structure. Yeah, I mean, I could have talked about the fact that it's these multiple narrators at different times. So that's why it's really helpful to look at the headers so that the reader knows where we are in terms of the story, and who's talking and why that's important. Finally, number 10, engaging language. Consider incorporating more engaging language to generate interest in the novel. Highlight what makes Bergthor's saga unique or captivating for readers. So, what I then did was I asked ChatGPT to rewrite the passage based on its suggestions, keeping the structure of the text intact. So, what I received as feedback then was very, very similar to what I had written in the original text. The first paragraph here on the Viking Age is pretty much the same. Its suggestion for transitioning from that paragraph to the next part is adding the word transitioning to. That's not a particularly effective way of transitioning. Just adding the word transitioning seems kind of a heavy-handed way to do that. So that would have probably been a better way to sort of, talk about how this specific story falls into the context, the historical context of the overall Viking Age. And I think that might have been a more effective way to connect that to the previous paragraph. The rest of it is pretty much word for word, for the most part, what I had written initially. So ChatGPT is not rewriting it based on these 10 recommendations it made. It's sort of rehashing what I already said in pretty much my own language. So that's another way of sort of recognizing its limitations. Again, going through the suggestions, some of them were very helpful, and I think based on that I could make some major changes, but I have to make them myself. So I can't rely on ChatGPT to do it for me. So that's one of the limitations that we need to be aware of. And then we also need to look at what is actually relevant and which ones of these recommendations are really ultimately not going to be particularly helpful. So let's look at how it can help us with appropriate word choices and using it as a dictionary and or thesaurus. In this second brief example, we're going to explore how we can use ChatGPT as a thesaurus or a dictionary potentially. It may seem unnecessary to use it that way because we have access to these kind of things either as hard copies or there are lots of great online ones. But it's just something to consider and getting some insight from ChatGPT. So here I chose a sentence from my novel where I'm not 100% sure that a word choice I used is the most effective one. So the sentence is, since our ancestors followed Eric the Red to settle Greenland, the temperate climate that lured them here has yielded to frigid temperatures and icy winds that chill our flesh and bones. So I'm telling ChatGPT that I'm struggling with the word choice, temperate. I'm not sure if that's necessarily the best word choice here. Can you recommend a more effective word to replace temperate in the context of the sentence? So it's important that in the context of what I'm trying to communicate here, it still works. So ChatGPT, as always, being very, very polite, responds certainly. In the context of the sentence, you might consider replacing temperate with mild or moderate. Here's the revised sentence. So it's the same sentence, but we have replaced temperate with mild. So again, we have to make sure that we're still saying the right thing. I used temperate initially because I'm not sure that the climate was necessarily mild. It was just much, much warmer than it is today. But that's not necessarily a very high bar. So perhaps Using moderate might actually be a better word choice than mild necessarily. Okay? But again, this might just require some more research on climate in the 10th and 11th century in the North Atlantic, and then decide, was it truly mild? Then I can replace it with the word mild. Or if it was simply warmer than it is today, then perhaps moderate might be a more effective word choice here. This brings us to the third and final example in this video, which is focusing on how to get started, how ChatGPT can generate a paragraph for us to sort of help us overcome our writer's block. So in my prompt here, I said, please write the introductory paragraph of a paper about the benefits of blended or hybrid courses. The target audience are college-level instructors. The paragraph should begin with a sentence about the increased popularity of blended or hybrid courses in higher education. So let's sort of lay that foundation, how this is becoming more and more popular. The paragraph should then transition to the academic benefits of blended learning in terms of academic achievement. So the benefits are multifold. It gives students more flexibility in terms of their schedule. They don't have to come to class every day. If it's asynchronous, they don't even need to log on at certain times. So I wanted to get information about how it can help students with their success in school and reflect their academic achievement. So this is the paragraph ChatGPT gave me. With the ever-increasing popularity of blended or hybrid courses in higher education, college-level instructors find themselves at the forefront of an educational shift. That's really kind of broad. Although we can argue that in a paper, the topic sentence, although it sort of has to provide the overview of the entire paper, can be reasonably broad as long as we're establishing this foundation and becoming more specific, following up with concrete, detailed, credible information immediately. This evolving pedagogical approach seamlessly integrates traditional face-to-face instruction with online components, offering a dynamic and flexible learning environment. Okay, still somewhat broad. Beyond the logistical advantages, what are they? I think that's a little vague. This paper aims to delve into the substantial academic benefits that arise from the implementation of blended courses. So hopefully we will find out what they are and if there are any facts that can back this up. As instructors navigate the landscape of contemporary education, understanding and harnessing the potential of blended learning becomes paramount, not only for the enhancement of student engagement, but also for fostering improved academic achievement. Okay, it's becoming more and more general. So we have these huge flowery words and really a minimum of meaningful information. Okay, so ideally in an introductory paragraph, we need to have some data, some hard facts from research that provide the necessary context and provide information to sort of set up the thesis, which we will then support in the body paragraphs. This paper explores the multifaceted advantages, whatever they may be, that blended courses bring to the academic realm, shedding light on how this innovative approach can contribute to elevated student success and learning outcomes. So I followed up by asking ChatGPT, what are the specific learning outcomes that reflect that elevated student success? Here are 10 items that ChatGPT gave me in terms of those details. I'm looking at the first 5. Enhanced engagement. Students actively participate in both face-to-face and online components, fostering a sense of community and collaboration. That really depends on how the instructor sets up the online course. So yes, we have the face-to-face component, and that's where students should actively participate. I make my English 102 students post discussions on the discussion forum and then respond to one another. So I am doing that actively to foster that sense of community and collaboration. But that's not something that's going to automatically happen. That's something that will be left up to the instructor. All right, number 2, improve flexibility and accessibility. Students demonstrate the ability to manage their time effectively, accessing course materials and participating in discussions at their own pace and convenience. That may not necessarily mean that they're managing their time effectively. I think this kind of setup gives students the opportunity to learn that and to hone those skills. So that's, I think, absolutely accurate. But again, that's something that instructors might potentially have to help their students with, because it's not something that they necessarily already know how to do. Number 3, increased retention of materials. Students exhibit improved retention of course content through a combination of traditional instruction, multimedia resources, and interactive online activities. Again, we have the traditional instruction in the classroom, but again, those multimedia resources are things that instructors need to generate and to set up for their students. So again, those are not going to magically create themselves. Development of digital literary skills. Students acquire, demonstrate proficiency in navigating online platforms. Yep, I think that's probably very true. Enhanced critical thinking and problem solving. Students apply critical thinking skills to analyze and solve problems presented in both face-to-face and online learning environments. I'm not sure how that's different from complete face-to-face learning or potentially complete online learning. Critical thinking is something that happens when students do research and question information and question what their instructors are telling them. So I'm not sure that that's essential to blended learning or descriptive of blended learning. It can be, but not necessarily. Number 6, adaptation to diverse learning styles. Students showcase adaptability, hopefully, to diverse instructional methods. Okay. Hopefully that's how it works and will help them. Number 7, increased autonomy and self-regulation. Students develop self-regulation skills. Again, we hope that's what's going to happen. Again, the blended learning is helpful with learning those skills because we have the online component, but we have, if you will, the training wheels of being there at least once or twice a week to have in-class instruction, so that if they are confused about something, if they need help, they can reach out in real time. Number 8, expanded collaboration and networking. So students engage in collaborative online activities. Again, that's something the instructor needs to establish and create. Application of technology skills, absolutely, to operate on an online platform, we need a certain level of technology skills. Number 10, heightened motivation and satisfaction. Students express higher levels of motivation and satisfaction with the course, indicating a positive correlation between the blended learning format and their overall academic experience. I would like to know where that information is coming from. So I would love to believe that this can increase students' motivation, but I think we need some more details to establish that. So I asked ChatGPT to rewrite the introductory paragraph to incorporate the specific learning outcomes that it listed above. Here is what it gave me. There are a couple of things where it becomes a little bit more specific, but for the most part, it is expressed in highly general terms again. Okay, so we look at this, we can say that it is fairly well written. It is sound, grammatically perfect prose, but it's not really giving us the kind of specific facts that we need in an introductory paragraph. However, what we've gotten with this is we have a sort of a template of how we can approach this, what we can start with and segue to. And then we have 10 recommendations on specific aspects of blended learning. And what we can do now is we can do some research on enhanced engagement. We can do some research on increased retention of material in blended courses. What studies have been done on digital literacy skills, how it can enhance critical thinking and problem-solving skills. So we have something that we now can do specific research on, and then we can replace the general statements in that paragraph that ChatGPT provided with information, with language that reflects the actual facts from our research, to provide this background information, the detailed facts that create context and exigency in that introductory section. So again, as I've said before, ChatGPT is a very powerful tool in a lot of ways. It can do a great number of things for us, but just please understand that it cannot do all of your work for you. So you can't just tell it, create this assignment for me. It's a great tool for you to improve your writing, to get feedback, to correct your grammar, whatever the case may be. But in the end, it really only becomes an improvement tool because you will have to do most of the work yourself. So hopefully these 5 videos have been helpful to you. If you have any questions or comments, you can leave them below. If you are one of my students at Towson, you can reach out to me and talk to me about this. Let me know how I can help. Thank you.